The cold fluorescent lights of the clinic buzzed overhead, casting everything in that particular shade of sickly blue-white that made even healthy skin look pallid. I stared at the grainy black and white image in my hand, still struggling to process what it meant. A baby. My baby. A tiny bean-shaped cluster of cells that would become a person. "You're about 8 weeks along, Ms. Reynolds," the technician had said, her voice carrying the practiced neutrality of someone who delivered life-changing news every day. "Everything looks normal so far." Normal. What a useless word. Nothing about this situation was normal. I stepped out into the late September rain. The ultrasound printout tucked safely in the inner pocket of my coat, protected from the downpour that matched my mood. Manhattan glittered around me, 1,000 lights reflecting in puddles like scattered stars, beautiful and completely indifferent to my crisis. I pulled my thin jacket tighter around me, wishing I'd worn something warmer. The weather had turned suddenly, catching the city in that awkward transition between seasons. 3 weeks. That's how long ago Mark had disappeared. No calls, no texts, nothing. Just vanished after nearly a year together, leaving behind half-empty drawers in my apartment and a void of unanswered questions. And now this. A baby I never planned for with a man who was no longer there. The subway ride back to my apartment in Queens was a blur of noise and bodies, the familiar discomfort of rush hour providing a strange comfort. At least some things remained predictable. I mechanically checked my phone every few minutes, scrolling through our last text exchange. Nothing had changed, of course. His final message was still there. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Miss you." He never showed that night, or any night after. My tiny apartment greeted me with the same empty silence that had become my constant companion. 1 bedroom, a kitchenette, and a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in. But it was mine. Or at least it would be until the rent was due again. 3 more weeks. My job as an administrative assistant at a law firm barely covered the bills when I was on my own. With a baby coming, the math became impossible. I dropped my bag on the counter and collapsed onto my second-hand couch, the springs protesting beneath my weight. The ultrasound had been the last thing I wanted to do today, but my doctor had insisted after confirming the pregnancy test results. "Let's make sure everything's developing correctly," she'd said gently, probably seeing the panic in my eyes. My hand drifted unconsciously to my still flat stomach. There was nothing to feel yet, no physical sign of the life growing inside me. But knowing it was there changed everything. I needed to tell someone, not my parents. They'd barely spoken to me since I'd moved to New York against their wishes 3 years ago. Not my coworkers. Office gossip spread faster than a virus. But I needed to share this burden with someone before it crushed me. My best friend Jenna was traveling for work, somewhere in Europe with spotty reception. Still, she'd want to know. With trembling fingers, I pulled out my phone and took a photo of the ultrasound. I opened our message thread, the last exchange from 2 days ago sitting there. She'd sent me a blurry picture of the Eiffel Tower with the caption, "Wish you were here." I attached the ultrasound image and typed, "Wish you were here too. I could really use my best friend right now. I'm pregnant, Jen. Mark's gone. I don't know what to do." My thumb hovered over the send button for a long moment before I finally pressed it. The little whoosh sound as the message departed carried a strange finality with it. There. It was real now. I had told someone. I set my phone down and dragged myself to the shower, letting hot water cascade over me until my skin turned pink and my thoughts grew foggy with steam. When I emerged, wrapped in my threadbare towel, I heard my phone chime from the living room. That was fast. Maybe Jenna was awake despite the time difference. I padded across the cold floor, leaving damp footprints behind me, and picked up my phone. The notification made my heart stop. It wasn't from Jenna. It was from a number I didn't recognize, with a New York area code. But the preview showed 3 words that made no sense. Is it mine? Confused, I opened the message. And then I saw it. The ultrasound image I'd sent, but this wasn't Jenna's thread. Somehow, in my exhausted emotional state, I'd sent the most intimate, vulnerable message of my life to the wrong number. My face burned with embarrassment as I quickly typed, "I'm so sorry. Wrong number. Please ignore." The response came immediately. "Who is this?" I hesitated. Should I even respond? But something about the abruptness of the question made me feel I needed to provide closure to this awkward exchange. Just someone who made a mistake. Sorry to bother you. The 3 dots appeared, indicating the stranger was typing. They disappeared, then reappeared several times, as if they were writing and rewriting their response. Finally, "What's your name?" A chill ran down my spine. Something about the directness of the question felt invasive, demanding. I shouldn't answer. I knew I shouldn't. I'm sorry, but I don't give my name to strangers. Again, I apologize for the mix-up. Have a good night. I set the phone down, my heart racing for reasons I couldn't quite explain. Before I could even turn away, it chimed again. You texted Mark's old number. The room seemed to tilt around me. Mark's old number? That was impossible. I still had Mark saved in my contacts. Unless he'd changed his number, unless the number I'd been texting for the past 3 weeks had never reached him at all. With shaking hands, I picked up the phone again. How do you know Mark? The response took longer this time, each second stretching painfully as I watched the typing indicator appear and disappear. We had business together. He owes me. My throat went dry. Mark was an investment banker, or so he'd claimed. We'd met at a coffee shop near the financial district, his expensive suit and confident smile a stark contrast to my bargain-rack dress and nervous demeanor. He'd been charming, attentive, generous. Too generous, perhaps. The gifts, the dinners at restaurants I could never afford, the weekend trips, all beyond what a mid-level banker should be able to afford. But I'd never questioned it. Never wanted to question it. What kind of business? I asked, though a voice in the back of my mind was screaming at me to stop, to block this number, to forget this conversation was happening, the kind people don't walk away from. My legs gave out beneath me, and I sank to the floor, the towel still wrapped around my damp body. Mark had been involved in something illegal. It was the only explanation that made sense of his sudden disappearance, of this cryptic exchange, of the subtle wrongness I'd sometimes sensed but pushed aside. I don't know where he is, I typed truthfully. He disappeared 3 weeks ago. I haven't heard from him since. The response was immediate. But you're carrying his child. It wasn't a question. The certainty in those words made my skin crawl. I don't know you, I wrote back, fear giving my words an edge. I'm not discussing my personal life with a stranger. Please don't contact me again. I moved to block the number, but before I could, another message appeared. You live at 1843 Astoria Boulevard, apartment 4B. You work at Hayes & Wilson Law Firm on 52nd Street. You leave your apartment at 7:15 every morning and stop at the corner cafe for a large vanilla latte. You've been alone since Mark left. You're scared, broke, and have no idea what you're going to do about that baby. Ice flooded my veins. They'd been watching me. For how long? Days? Weeks? As if reading my thoughts, the next message came. I know everything about you, Eliza Reynolds. And now I know about the baby too. My name. They knew my name. I should call the police. That was the rational response to being stalked, to receiving threatening messages. But something told me that whoever this was, they operated beyond the reach of ordinary law enforcement. What do you want from me? I managed to type, my fingers numb with fear. The answer came swiftly. Information. Mark stole something that belongs to me before he ran. $2 million and a flash drive with sensitive data. I want it back. I don't have any money or flash drive, I protested. I barely knew Mark, it seems. Whatever he took, he didn't give it to me. The typing indicator appeared again, disappeared, then reappeared. I held my breath. Maybe you don't know you have it. Maybe he hid it. Either way, we need to talk, in person. Terror seized me. Meet this person? This criminal who'd been stalking me? Who might be responsible for Mark's disappearance? I wasn't that stupid. No, I typed back firmly. I'm not meeting you. If you contact me again, I'll go to the police. I waited for the threatening response, for escalation. Instead, there was silence. 1 minute stretched into 5. Maybe they'd given up. Maybe my bluff had worked. I finally gathered the strength to stand, to move to my bedroom and put on pajamas, my mind racing with what to do next. I needed to call Jenna, to tell her what had happened. I needed to think about moving, changing my job, disappearing like Mark had. The sudden pounding at my door made me scream. "Ms. Reynolds?" A deep voice called through the thin wood. "We need you to come with us." I backed away from the door, looking frantically for a weapon, my phone, anything. "I've called the police," I lied, my voice breaking. "They're on their way." A laugh from the other side. "No, you haven't. Now please, open the door before we open it for you." "Who are you?" I demanded, grabbing a kitchen knife even as I recognized the futility of the gesture. "Mr. Castellano sent us to bring you to him. He's very interested in meeting the mother of his business partner's child, Castellano." The name meant nothing to me, but the authoritative way it was delivered told me it should. Whoever this man was, he clearly commanded respect. Or fear. "I'm not going anywhere with you," I insisted, though my voice trembled. "Ms. Reynolds." The voice became softer, almost gentle. "You can come willingly and be treated as a guest, or we can force the issue and treat you as a problem to be solved. Mr. Castellano prefers the former, but he's prepared for the latter." My options were disappearing by the second. I could feel the walls closing in, my carefully constructed life crumbling around me. Whatever Mark had been involved in, I was now caught in it too, along with my unborn child. "I need to get dressed," I said finally, defeat washing over me. "You have 3 minutes," came the reply. I moved on autopilot, pulling on jeans, a sweater, and boots. I grabbed my phone and keys, though I suspected neither would be much use to me where I was going. As I approached the door, my hand rested briefly on my stomach. "I'll protect you," I whispered to the tiny life inside me. A promise I had no idea how to keep. I opened the door to find 2 men in black suits, their broad shoulders filling my narrow hallway. Their faces were expressionless, professionally blank, but their eyes assessed me with cold efficiency. "Ms. Reynolds," the taller one nodded. "Mr. Castellano is waiting." As they escorted me downstairs and out to a black SUV with tinted windows, I caught sight of something on the roof of my building that hadn't been there before. The sleek, menacing silhouette of a helicopter, its blades slowly turning in the night air. The message on my phone suddenly made terrifying sense. "Come now!" he'd commanded. And now I was. The helicopter blades sliced through the night air with a rhythmic thump that vibrated in my chest. I sat rigidly on the leather seat, strapped in tightly between the 2 suited men who had collected me from my apartment. Neither had spoken since instructing me to put on the noise-canceling headphones that now cupped my ears, isolating me in a bubble of muffled sound and mounting dread. Through the window, I watched New York City transform beneath us. The familiar grid of streets and buildings shrank away as we rose higher, the city becoming a sprawling constellation of lights. I had never been in a helicopter before. Under different circumstances, I might have found the view breathtaking. Now, it only emphasized how quickly I was being carried away from everything familiar, everything safe. Where were they taking me? To this Castellano person, obviously. But where? And what would happen when we arrived? The questions circled in my mind like hungry wolves, each one more terrifying than the last. One of the men tapped my shoulder and pointed. Following his gesture, I saw we were approaching what appeared to be a large estate north of the city, situated on a cliff overlooking the Hudson River. A helipad glowed with perimeter lights on impeccably manicured grounds. Even from the air, the property radiated wealth and power. Old money wealth, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. The helicopter descended smoothly, the pilot expertly navigating the craft onto the illuminated circle. As the rotors began to slow, one of my escorts removed his headphones and gestured for me to do the same. "We've arrived, Ms. Reynolds," he said, his voice oddly formal. "Mr. Castellano is waiting in the main house." The other man unstrapped my harness and opened the door. The rush of cool air against my face carried the scent of pine trees and water. It was quieter here than in the city, the night filled with natural sounds instead of traffic and humanity. They led me along a stone path, lit by small ground lamps, toward a mansion that loomed against the starry sky. The architecture was classic, almost European, with ivy-climbing stone walls and large windows glowing amber from within. This wasn't just a house, It was a fortress, disguised as a home, isolated and impenetrable. My legs felt like lead as we climbed the wide stone steps to the entrance. A massive wooden door that looked like it belonged in a medieval castle. Before we reached it, the door swung open, revealing a slender woman in her 50s, dressed in a simple black dress. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her eyes assessed me with clinical detachment. "Ms. Reynolds," she acknowledged with a slight accent I couldn't place. "Follow me. Mr. Castellano doesn't like to be kept waiting." The men who had escorted me remained at the door as I followed the woman into the house. The interior was even more impressive than the exterior. Soaring ceilings, marble floors, artwork that looked like it belonged in museums rather than a private residence. Yet, despite the grandeur, there was a sterility to the place, as if it were a stage set rather than a home. We passed several closed doors, our footsteps echoing in the silent hallways. I saw no other people, though I had the distinct feeling we were being watched. Security cameras, I realized, discreetly positioned at intervals along the corridor. "Who is Mr. Castellano?" I finally asked, my voice sounding small in the cavernous space. The woman didn't slow her pace or turn around. "You'll find out soon enough." She led me to a set of double doors at the end of a long hallway where she stopped and knocked softly. After a moment, she opened one door and gestured for me to enter. "Wait here," she instructed, before closing the door behind me, leaving me alone. I found myself in what appeared to be a study. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined 2 walls, filled with leather-bound volumes. A massive desk dominated the space, its surface clear except for a laptop and a single file folder. Behind it, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the river, the moonlight casting silver ribbons across the dark water. The room smelled of leather, old books, and something else, a subtle cologne with notes of sandalwood and spice, masculine, expensive, and somehow dangerous. I stood awkwardly in the center of the room, afraid to touch anything, afraid to even sit without permission. Minutes passed, each one stretching my nerves tighter. Was this a tactic? Making me wait, letting my fear build? If so, it was working. The soft click of the door opening behind me made me jump. I spun around, heart hammering against my ribs. The man who entered moved with the quiet confidence of a predator. Unhurried, deliberate, aware of his power. He was taller than I expected, broad-shouldered but lean, dressed in a charcoal suit that had clearly been tailored to fit his frame perfectly. Dark hair with threads of silver at the temples framed a face that might have been carved from stone. All sharp angles and planes, with deep-set eyes that studied me with unsettling intensity. This, then, was Castellano. He didn't look like what I'd imagined a mob boss would look like. No flashy jewelry or slicked-back hair. Nothing like the caricatures from movies. Instead, he exuded a refined danger, like a finely crafted blade. "Ms. Reynolds?" he said, his voice a low baritone with just the faintest trace of an Italian accent. "Thank you for joining me this evening." As if I'd had a choice, he gestured to one of 2 leather armchairs positioned near the unlit fireplace. "Please, sit." I perched on the edge of the chair, watching as he moved to a sideboard and poured amber liquid into 2 crystal glasses. He handed one to me, then took the other chair, sitting with an ease I couldn't imagine feeling. "I don't drink," I said, looking at the glass in my hand. "And I shouldn't anyway because of the—" I trailed off, gesturing vaguely toward my midsection. Something flickered across his face, too quick to read. "Of course," he said, taking the glass back and replacing it with a bottle of water from a small refrigerator hidden in the cabinetry. "The baby. Mark's baby." The way he said Mark's name sent a chill down my spine, like he was pronouncing a death sentence. "Where is Mark?" I asked, surprising myself with my boldness. Castellano studied me for a long moment, taking a sip of his drink before answering. "I was hoping you might tell me that." "I told you already, I don't know." "He disappeared 3 weeks ago. No warning, no explanation." My voice cracked slightly. I thought he loved me. A bitter smile curved his lips. "Mark Tanner is very good at making people believe what he wants them to believe." "You speak about him in the present tense," I observed. "So he's not—" I couldn't say the word. "Dead?" Castellano finished for me. "Not yet." though when I find him he may wish he were. The casual way he referenced murder made my blood run cold. This wasn't an idle threat or hyperbole. This was a statement of fact from a man accustomed to deciding who lived and who died. "What did he do to you?" I asked, clutching the water bottle tightly. Castellano set his glass down and leaned forward, his eyes never leaving mine. "Mark Tanner worked for me for 5 years. He was brilliant with numbers, with finding patterns where others saw only chaos. I trusted him with my financial operations. And then, 3 weeks ago, he disappeared with $2 million of my money and information that could destroy everything I've built." He paused, watching my reaction carefully. "The question, Ms. Reynolds, is how much you know about any of this." "Nothing," I insisted, my voice steadier than I felt. "I thought he was an investment banker. We met a year ago, started dating. He moved some things into my apartment 6 months ago, but kept his own place too. He said it was closer to work." I laughed hollowly. I guess that was just another lie. "You never questioned where his money came from? The lifestyle he maintained?" I looked down at my hands, shame washing over me. I assumed he was good at his job, that he came from money. I didn't want to look too closely. Things in my life were finally going well. "And now you're pregnant with his child," Castellano stated, his gaze dropping briefly to my stomach. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. He stood suddenly, moving to the windows, his back to me as he looked out at the river. "Do you know why I brought you here, Eliza?" The use of my first name startled me. It sounded intimate, almost tender, in his mouth. "Because you think I have what Mark stole," I answered. "But I don't. I would tell you if I did." He turned to face me, his expression unreadable. "I believe you." The words should have brought relief, but something in his tone kept me on edge. "Then why am I here? Why not just let me go?" He moved toward me with that same predatory grace, stopping just close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. I could smell his cologne more clearly now, could see the faint scar that ran along his jawline. "Because Mark Tanner will come back for you," he said softly. "And when he does, I'll be waiting." Understanding dawned, horrible and clear. "You're using me as bait." "I prefer to think of it as providing you with protection while we both wait for Mark to make his next move." "Protection?" I repeated incredulously. "You had me kidnapped from my home." His expression hardened. "If I hadn't sent my men to collect you, someone else might have. Mark didn't just steal from me, Eliza. He sold information to rivals, people who wouldn't hesitate to use you to get to him. People who wouldn't care that you're carrying his child." A chill ran through me at the implication. "You're saying there are others looking for him? For me?" He nodded once. "This way, at least I can ensure your safety and the safety of the child until the situation is resolved." "And then what?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "After you find Mark and get back what he stole, what happens to me then?" Something flashed in his eyes, not anger or cruelty, but something more complex. "That depends on you." Before I could ask what he meant, the door opened, and the silver-haired woman entered. "Sir, Giovanni is here with the information you requested." Castellano nodded. "Show Ms. Reynolds to her room, Elena. Make sure she has everything she needs." Elena beckoned to me from the doorway. I stood on shaky legs, still clutching the water bottle like a lifeline. "Wait," I said, as Castellano turned back to his desk. "How long are you keeping me here?" He looked up, his gaze direct and unapologetic. "As long as necessary." "I have a job," I protested weakly. "A life. Both of which will be there when you return," he replied dismissively. "For now, consider yourself a guest in my home. A protected guest, but a guest nonetheless. You'll want for nothing while you're here." "Nothing except freedom," I thought bitterly. "And Eliza," he added, his voice softening almost imperceptibly. "I'm sorry about the baby. That complicates things in ways I hadn't anticipated." There was something in his expression, a flicker of genuine emotion, that caught me off guard. For a moment, he looked almost human. Then it was gone, replaced by the cold mask of authority. Elena will see to your comfort. We'll speak again in the morning." Dismissed, I followed Elena out of the study and back into the labyrinthine hallways of the mansion. She led me up a grand staircase to the second floor, then down another corridor lined with doors. "This will be your room," she said, opening one of them to reveal a suite larger than my entire apartment. A four-poster bed dominated the space, draped in luxurious linens. A sitting area with plush chairs faced a fireplace. Another door presumably led to a bathroom. "There are clothes in the closet that should fit you," Elena continued, gesturing to a walk-in closet visible through an open door. "If you need anything, use the house phone beside the bed to call me." I stepped into the room, still trying to process everything that had happened in the last few hours. "Am I a prisoner here?" Elena's expression softened slightly. "Mr. Castellano has instructed that you're to be treated as an honored guest. The grounds are available to you during daylight hours, but you cannot leave the property, for your own safety. And if I try?" Her lips thinned. "The security here is comprehensive. I wouldn't recommend testing it." With that, she left, closing the door behind her. I listened for the sound of a lock engaging, but heard nothing. Still, I knew I was trapped just as surely as if there had been bars on the windows. I moved to the bathroom, needing a moment to collect myself. It was as luxurious as the bedroom. Marble and glass, with a shower large enough for 3 people and a soaking tub beside a window that overlooked the gardens. Expensive toiletries lined the counter, arranged with military precision. My reflection in the mirror above the sink shocked me. I looked pale, wild-eyed, my hair disheveled from the helicopter ride, but it was the fear in my eyes that disturbed me most. Naked, primal fear that I couldn't hide. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to regain some semblance of control. As I dried my face on a monogrammed towel, my hand drifted unconsciously to my stomach. "It's going to be okay," I whispered, not believing it for a second. "We're going to be okay." But as I returned to the bedroom and stared out the window at the moonlit grounds surrounded by high walls and what I assumed were armed guards, I knew that nothing would ever be okay again. I was caught in a dangerous game between Mark and Castellano, with my life and my baby's life hanging in the balance. And somewhere out there, Mark was either running for his life or planning his next move. Did he know I was pregnant? Did he care? Was he coming back for me, as Castellano believed? Or had he abandoned us both without a second thought? As I curled up on the edge of the massive bed, still fully dressed and trembling, I didn't know which possibility frightened me more. I woke to sunlight streaming through windows I didn't recognize, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar softness of the bed beneath me and the silence that surrounded me. No traffic noise, no neighbors arguing through paper-thin walls, none of the sounds that usually accompanied my mornings in Queens. Then, the memories of the previous night crashed over me in a wave of renewed fear. The mistaken text, the helicopter, Castellano. I sat up, surprised to find myself under the covers in a silk nightgown I didn't remember changing into. My clothes from yesterday were nowhere to be seen. The thought of someone undressing me while I slept sent a shudder through me, though I had to admit the alternative. Sleeping in my jeans and sweater would have been uncomfortable. A soft knock at the door made me jump. "Ms. Reynolds," Elena's voice called. "Are you awake?" I pulled the covers up to my chin, suddenly feeling exposed despite the modesty of the nightgown. "Yes," I called back, my voice raspy with sleep and anxiety. The door opened, and Elena entered carrying a tray. She was dressed identically to the night before, making me wonder if she owned multiple versions of the same black dress, or if she simply never changed. "Breakfast," she announced, setting the tray on a small table near the window. "Mr. Castellano thought you might prefer to eat in your room this morning." The aroma of coffee and freshly baked bread reached me, and my stomach growled in response. I hadn't eaten since lunch the day before, I realized. "Thank you," I said, cautiously sliding out of bed, conscious of my bare feet on the cold hardwood floor. "What time is it?" "Just after 9, Elena replied, moving to the closet. She pulled out a simple cream-colored dress and laid it across the foot of the bed. "Mr. Castellano would like to meet with you at 10 in the garden. He suggested this might be suitable." I looked at the dress, clearly expensive, with a loose flowing cut that would accommodate my still non-existent baby bump. It was exactly my size and almost exactly my style, which raised disturbing questions about how much Castellano knew about me before I'd accidentally texted him. "My clothes," I began, "are being cleaned," Elena interrupted smoothly. "They'll be returned to you, but Mr. Castellano thought you might appreciate a change of wardrobe during your stay." During my captivity, she meant. The politeness of it all, the breakfast tray, the silk nightgown, the new clothes, felt like a veneer of civility over something fundamentally violent. "I need to call my work," I said. "They'll be wondering where I am." Elena's expression revealed nothing. "Mr. Castellano has already arranged for a message to be sent to your employer. You've been granted a leave of absence for family reasons." The casual control over my life sent a fresh wave of anger through me. "He had no right." "He has every right," Elena cut in, her voice suddenly hard. "You don't understand the position you're in, Ms. Reynolds. The danger. Mr. Castellano is offering you protection that others in his position might not extend. I suggest you show some gratitude." Her words doused my anger like cold water. I was alone, pregnant, and at the mercy of a man who casually spoke of murder. Whatever game I was caught in, it had rules I didn't understand, and stakes higher than I could imagine. "I'll be back to escort you to the garden at 10, Elena said, her tone softening slightly. "Try to eat something. It's not good for the baby if you don't." With that, she left, closing the door behind her. I ate mechanically, my mind racing. The food was delicious: fresh fruit, yogurt, warm bread with butter and honey, and decaffeinated coffee, but I barely tasted it. I was too busy trying to formulate a plan, some way out of this situation. I could try to escape, but to what end? I had no idea where I was, beyond north of the city. Even if I somehow made it past the security Elena had mentioned, where would I go? And if what Castellano said was true, about others looking for me, running might put me in even greater danger. After eating, I showered quickly, wrapping myself in one of the plush towels embroidered with the letter C. The bathroom was stocked with high-end toiletries, shampoo that smelled of jasmine, body wash scented with vanilla and amber. In another life, I might have reveled in such luxury. Now, it felt like being prepared for sacrifice. The dress fit perfectly, falling just below my knees in soft folds. I found underwear in the dresser drawer, tags still attached, at least sparing me the indignity of wearing something another woman had left behind. In the closet were shoes in my size, and I selected a pair of simple ballet flats that matched the dress. Exactly at 10, Elena knocked again. She looked me over with an appraising eye and gave a small nod of approval before leading me through the house. In daylight, the mansion was even more impressive. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating artwork that I now recognized as original pieces by masters. Old masters. The kind that belonged in museums, not private homes. We passed a Monet that made me pause mid-step, earning an impatient look from Elena. "Mr. Castellano collects art," she said, noticing my expression. Among other things, we exited through French doors onto a stone terrace that overlooked expansive gardens. Immaculately trimmed hedges formed geometric patterns around beds of late-blooming flowers. Stone pathways wound through the landscape, leading to secluded benches and small fountains. Elena pointed to a gazebo near a reflecting pool at the center of the garden. "Mr. Castellano is waiting for you there. Go directly to him." I stepped out into the autumn sunshine, the cool air carrying the scent of roses and earth. Despite my situation, I couldn't help but appreciate the beauty surrounding me. The garden was a masterpiece of design, each element carefully planned and maintained to create an atmosphere of serene elegance. As I approached the gazebo, I saw Castellano seated at a small table, reading something on a tablet. He wore casual clothes today, dark slacks and a light sweater that somehow looked just as expensive as his suit from the night before. A steaming cup of coffee sat untouched at his elbow. He looked up as I approached, rising to his feet with that same fluid grace. "Eliza," he greeted me, gesturing to the chair across from his. "You look well. Did you sleep?" "As well as could be expected," I answered carefully, taking the offered seat. "Considering I was kidnapped and am being held against my will." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Direct. I appreciate that quality. He sat back down, setting aside his tablet. I thought we might continue our conversation from last night. There are things you should know about Mark, about your situation. Why should I believe anything you tell me? I challenged, surprising myself with my boldness. You're a criminal. I am many things, he replied, unperturbed by my accusation. A businessman, an art collector, a man who values loyalty and abhors betrayal. His dark eyes fixed on mine. Mark betrayed that loyalty, put my organization at risk, and stole what was mine. These are facts, not allegations. I looked away, unable to hold his intense gaze. What do you want from me, Mr. Castellano? Vito, he corrected. If we're going to be spending time together, you might as well use my first name. The familiarity made me uncomfortable. Fine. Vito, what do you want from me? He leaned forward, his expression serious. I want to understand what Mark might have told you, what he might have hidden with you, knowingly or unknowingly. I've told you I don't have anything of yours, I insisted. I didn't even know who Mark really worked for until last night. Vito studied me for a long moment, as if trying to read the truth in my face. I believe you, he said finally. But that doesn't mean he didn't hide something in your apartment, your possessions. Something you might have overlooked. Your men searched my apartment last night, didn't they? I guessed, remembering how thoroughly they'd checked each room before escorting me out. He nodded once. A preliminary search, yes. They found nothing obvious, but Mark is clever. He wouldn't make it easy to find, so what now? You keep me prisoner here indefinitely? Not a prisoner, he corrected. A protected guest. There's a difference. Not from where I'm sitting, I muttered. He sighed, looking out over the garden. You still don't understand the danger you're in. Mark didn't just steal from me. He sold information to the Bratva, the Russian Mafia. Information about my operations, my people. His jaw tightened. 3 of my men died because of what he revealed. The seriousness in his voice sent a chill through me. And the Russians? They're looking for him too? For him, and for anything else he might have taken. They know about you, Eliza. They know you were important to him. I wasn't that important, I said bitterly. He left me. Vito's eyes returned to mine, surprisingly gentle. Perhaps he thought he was protecting you by leaving. Or perhaps he always intended to return for you once he had arranged his escape. The thought that Mark might have planned to come back for me brought a confusing mix of emotions: hope, anger, fear. He doesn't know about the baby, I said quietly. I only found out after he disappeared. Something flickered in Vito's expression. Sympathy, perhaps, or something deeper. The baby complicates things, he admitted. But it also gives us an advantage. If Mark cares for you at all, he'll return when he learns you're carrying his child. And if he doesn't care? I asked, voicing the fear that had haunted me since seeing that first positive pregnancy test. Vito didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was softer than I'd heard it before. Then I'll ensure you and the child are taken care of, regardless. I stared at him, trying to reconcile this unexpected offer with the dangerous criminal I knew him to be. Why would you do that? Because despite what you think of me, I'm not a monster, he said simply. I have a code. Women and children are never to be harmed in my business. He paused, looking at me intently. And because Mark worked for me for 5 years, in some ways he was like family. That makes his child my responsibility, in a sense. The child is my responsibility, I said firmly. Mine alone. A small smile curved his lips. Fierce, good. You'll need that fierceness in the months ahead. Before I could respond, a man in a suit approached the gazebo. Unlike the guards from the night before, this one moved with the confidence of someone higher in the hierarchy. He nodded respectfully to Vito before speaking in rapid Italian, too low and fast for me to catch even if I had understood the language. Vito's expression darkened. He replied in the same language, his tone sharp. The man nodded again and retreated back toward the house. What is it? I asked, tension coiling in my stomach. Vito stood, suddenly all business again. We need to go inside. Now. Why? What's happening? He moved around the table and took my arm. guiding me to my feet with firm but gentle pressure. One of my sources has informed me that Mikhail Petrov, the head of the Bratva operation I mentioned, has learned of your whereabouts, or at least the whereabouts you had yesterday. Fear shot through me. They went to my apartment? Yes. Fortunately, you weren't there. His grip on my arm tightened slightly as he led me back toward the house at a brisk pace. This confirms what I told you. You're safer here than anywhere else right now. The gardener I hadn't noticed before suddenly straightened from where he'd been pruning roses, revealing a gun holstered at his hip. Another man I had taken for a groundskeeper spoke quietly into what I now realized was a communications device disguised as a Bluetooth earpiece. The peaceful garden transformed before my eyes into a carefully monitored security zone. How many of your people are watching us right now? I asked, scanning the grounds with new awareness. Enough, Vito replied cryptically. My home is the most secure location in the tri-state area. No one gets in or out without my knowledge and permission. As we re-entered the house, I noticed more security personnel had appeared, moving with purposeful efficiency. Vito led me not back to my room but to his study, closing the door behind us. I need to make some calls, he said, moving to his desk. You'll stay here where I can keep an eye on you. I sank into the same chair I'd occupied the night before, watching as he picked up a secure phone and began speaking rapidly in Italian. Though I couldn't understand the words, the tension in his voice and posture was clear. While he was distracted, I studied the room more carefully than I had the previous night. The bookshelves held a mix of classics, business texts, and what appeared to be rare first editions. One shelf was dedicated to family photographs. Vito with an older man who shared his features, presumably his father. Vito at what looked like a wedding, standing beside a beautiful woman in white. Vito holding a baby, his expression softer than I'd seen it. He had a family. The realization shouldn't have surprised me, but somehow it did. In my mind, men like him existed in isolation, defined solely by their criminal activities. The evidence of a personal life, of connections and love, humanized him in a way that made me uncomfortable. Vito finished his call and turned to find me looking at the photographs. If he was bothered by my curiosity, he didn't show it. My sister's wedding, he said, nodding toward the photo I'd been examining. 5 years ago. The baby is her son, my nephew. You have a large family? I asked, feeling strangely awkward making small talk with the man who was effectively my captor. Once, he said, a shadow crossing his face. My parents, 2 sisters, a brother. Now just one sister remains, with her husband and son. The implication hung in the air between us. His family had been victims of the violent world he inhabited. I'm sorry, I said softly, and meant it. He acknowledged my sympathy with a slight nod. Family is everything, Eliza. It's what we fight for, what we die for if necessary. His gaze dropped briefly to my midsection. You understand that now, I think. I placed a protective hand over my stomach. Yes. A knock at the door interrupted the moment. The same man who had approached us in the garden entered after Vito called permission. Giovanni has returned with the package, sir, he reported. And there's been another development. We've intercepted a message. It appears Mark Tanner has been trying to contact Ms. Reynolds. My heart jumped. What? How? Giovanni, the man who had delivered the news, looked to Vito for permission before answering me. At Vito's nod, he continued, An email was sent to your work account this morning. We've been monitoring all your communications since last night. The invasion of privacy should have angered me, but I was too focused on the news about Mark. What did it say? The email? Giovanni again deferred to Vito, who nodded once more. It was brief, Giovanni said. Just 3 words. Are you safe? He knows, Vito said, his expression darkening. He knows you're no longer at your apartment. He's reaching out to confirm his suspicions, or he's genuinely concerned about me, I countered. Vito's laugh was without humor. Mark Tanner is concerned only with himself and his survival. If he's reaching out to you now, it's because he needs something. You don't know that, I insisted, though a part of me feared he was right. After all, Mark had disappeared without a word, leaving me alone and unknowingly pregnant. What kind of man did that if he truly cared? I know Mark better than you think, Vito said. I recognized his talent early, brought him into my organization when he was still in his 20s. I mentored him, trusted him, treated him like family. His voice hardened, and he repaid that trust by stealing from me and selling information that got my people killed. The vehemence in his voice silenced me. Whatever Mark had done, Vito's hatred went beyond the theft of money. This was personal. What are you going to do? I asked finally. Reply to his message, Vito said. Draw him out. Fear gripped me. Using me as bait, you mean? Using the situation to our mutual advantage, he corrected. You want answers from Mark. So do I. This may be our opportunity to get them. I wanted to argue, to refuse to participate in his trap. But the truth was that I did want answers. Why had Mark left? Had any of what we shared been real? Did he know about the baby? Would he care? What would the reply say? I asked cautiously. Vito studied me, his dark eyes unreadable. The truth, or a version of it, that you're safe but not at home, that you know what he did, that you need to see him, and when he responds, if he responds, Vito corrected, we'll arrange a meeting, somewhere public, somewhere he'll feel safe enough to show his face. And then your men will grab him, I concluded. Vito didn't deny it. He has something that belongs to me. Information that puts lives at risk. Yes, I intend to recover it. And Mark? What happens to him? Something cold and implacable settled over Vito's features. That depends on him. If he cooperates, returns what he stole, provides information on his dealings with the Bratva, he might survive this. The qualifier, might, hung in the air between us. I won't help you kill him, I said firmly, my hand still resting protectively over my stomach. Whatever he's done, he's this baby's father. Vito regarded me for a long moment. I'm not asking you to help me kill him, Eliza. I'm asking you to help me find him before the Russians do. Because I promise you, if they find him first, his death will be neither quick nor merciful. The harsh reality of the situation settled over me like a physical weight. I was caught between two dangerous forces, Vito's cold, calculated vengeance, and the brutal violence of the Russian Mafia. And somewhere in the middle was Mark, the father of my child, a man I was beginning to realize I had never truly known. All right, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. I'll help you contact him, but I want to be there when you meet him. I deserve answers too. Vito's expression softened marginally. Of course, you'll be there. He glanced at Giovanni. Have Elena prepare lunch for Ms. Reynolds in her room. I need to make arrangements. As Giovanni moved to carry out his instructions, Vito turned back to me. Rest assured, Eliza, I'll do everything in my power to keep you and your child safe. Whatever happens with Mark, you have my protection. The irony wasn't lost on me, seeking protection from the very man who had orchestrated my abduction. But as I was escorted back to my luxurious prison, I realized I had few options left. For better or worse, my fate, and my baby's fate, was now entwined with Vito Castellanos, and somewhere out there, Mark was deciding whether to respond to the bait we were about to dangle, whether to risk everything to see me again. I desperately hoped he would, not just for the answers I needed, but because despite everything, a small part of me still believed that the man I had loved might still exist beneath the lies. 3 days passed in a strange limbo of luxury and confinement. My gilded cage was comfortable beyond anything I'd ever experienced. Gourmet meals, designer clothes, attentive service from Elena and the household staff, but it was a cage nonetheless. I was permitted to walk the grounds during daylight hours, always with the shadowy presence of security personnel nearby. I could read books from Vito's extensive library, watch television in a lavish media room, even swim in the indoor pool housed in a glass-enclosed pavilion overlooking the river. But I couldn't leave. Couldn't contact anyone from my former life. Couldn't escape the growing sense that my old existence was slipping away like sand through my fingers. Mark had responded to our message. A brief reply that revealed nothing beyond his continued interest. Where are you? Are you truly safe? I need to know. Vito had crafted the response with meticulous care. each word calculated to draw Mark out without revealing too much. "I'm staying with friends outside the city. I know what you did, what you took. We need to talk about the baby." The mention of the baby had been my suggestion, a truth I'd insisted on including. If Mark was going to risk meeting me, he deserved to know why it mattered so much. His response had come swiftly. "Baby? What baby?" And then, minutes later, "Are you pregnant, Eliza?" The raw shock in those simple words had convinced me that Mark truly hadn't known. Whether that absolved him of abandoning me or merely added another layer to his betrayal, I wasn't sure. After several more exchanges, carefully monitored and approved by Vito, Mark had agreed to meet me at a public cafe in Manhattan, neutral ground where he presumably felt safe from ambush. The meeting was set for this afternoon at 3. I stood before the mirror in my room, examining my reflection in the elegant navy blue dress Vito had provided for the occasion. It was conservative but flattering, projecting an image of poised confidence I certainly didn't feel. My hair was pulled back in a simple chignon, my makeup minimal but polished. I looked like a stranger to myself, a wealthier, more sophisticated version of Eliza Reynolds. A soft knock at the door announced Elena's arrival. "It's time," she said simply. I followed her through the now familiar corridors of the mansion to Vito's study. He was waiting there, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit similar to the one he'd worn the night we met. The similarity wasn't lost on me. It reinforced the power dynamic between us, reminded me of my position in his world. "You look lovely," he said, his dark eyes taking in my appearance with an assessment that felt more strategic than appreciative. "Are you ready for this?" "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied, my hands instinctively moving to my stomach in what had become a habitual gesture of protection. Vito noticed the movement, his expression softening momentarily. "Remember what we discussed. Keep the conversation focused on the baby and your future together. Express concern about his safety, but don't press him about what he stole or where he's been hiding. Let him volunteer that information." "I know my role," I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "I'm the bait. You're the key," he corrected. "Mark clearly cares for you enough to risk this meeting. That gives you power in this situation, Eliza. Use it." I nodded, though I felt anything but powerful. I was a pawn in a game between dangerous men, my only leverage the child growing inside me. "My men will be positioned throughout the cafe and surrounding area," Vito continued. "Giovanni will pose as our driver and remain with the car. 2 others will be seated at nearby tables. The rest will maintain a perimeter outside." "And you?" I asked. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I'll be closer than you think." He stepped forward, reaching into his pocket to withdraw a small velvet box. "One last detail," he said, opening it to reveal a delicate diamond pendant on a platinum chain. "This contains a tracking device and microphone. For your safety." I eyed the necklace warily. "You really think that's necessary?" "I'm not taking chances with your life, or the life of your child," he said firmly. "If something goes wrong, if Mark has planned something we haven't anticipated, this ensures we can find you." The sincerity in his voice was unsettling. Over the past 3 days, I'd observed flashes of humanity beneath Vito's dangerous exterior, genuine concern when I'd experienced morning sickness, quiet respect for my privacy, small kindnesses that seemed at odds with what I knew of his criminal empire. It made it harder to see him as the villain in this story, despite the circumstances of our association. I turned and lifted my hair, allowing him to fasten the necklace around my throat. His fingers were warm against my skin, the touch brief but startlingly intimate. The pendant nestled just below my collarbone, the diamonds catching the light with every breath. "Beautiful," he murmured, stepping back to observe the effect. "And virtually undetectable." The helicopter ride into Manhattan passed in tense silence. I sat beside Vito, watching the landscape transform from the wooded seclusion of his estate to the dense urban grid of the city. A sleek black SUV awaited us on a private helipad atop a midtown building. Giovanni held the door as Vito helped me inside, his hand at the small of my back both supportive and possessive. "Remember," Vito said as we approached the cafe, his voice low and urgent, "no matter what Mark says, what he promises, He can't protect you from the Russians. Only I can do that. I nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at me. Was Vito exaggerating the threat to ensure my cooperation? Or was the danger as real and immediate as he claimed? The cafe was upscale but understated, the kind of place where privacy was respected and conversations remained hushed. Vito's men had secured a table by the window, visible from the street but not too exposed. I was to sit alone, appearing vulnerable but accessible. "I'll be watching," Vito promised, as Giovanni helped me from the car. "Every moment. If anything feels wrong, use the code word we discussed." "Honeymoon," I confirmed, my mouth dry with anxiety. Vito's hand closed briefly over mine, a gesture that might have looked affectionate to any observer, but carried the weight of warning. "Be careful, Eliza. Mark is desperate, and desperate men are dangerous." I entered the cafe alone, acutely aware of the eyes tracking my movement, both Vito's men and perhaps others with more sinister intentions. The maitre d' led me to the reserved table, where I ordered herbal tea with hands that trembled slightly despite my efforts to appear calm. 3 o'clock came and went. By 1:15, anxiety had my stomach in knots. Had Mark sensed a trap? Had he seen Vito's men and fled? Or worse, had the Russians found him first? At 25 past, just as I was beginning to think he wouldn't come, I saw him. Mark entered from the side entrance, moving quickly between tables, his face partially obscured by a baseball cap and sunglasses. He was thinner than I remembered, his once immaculate appearance now disheveled, his designer clothes replaced by jeans and a worn leather jacket. But it was him. The man I'd thought I loved, the father of my child, the thief who had set this entire nightmare in motion. Our eyes met across the room, and for a moment everything else fell away. There was recognition, relief, and something else in his expression. Fear, certainly, but also guilt. He knew what he had done to me. He slid into the chair across from mine, removing his sunglasses but keeping the cap low over his eyes. "Eliza," he breathed, reaching for my hands across the table. "Thank God you're all right." I pulled my hands back before he could touch me, a reflexive withdrawal that seemed to surprise him. "Am I?" I asked quietly. "All right?" He glanced around nervously, clearly scanning for threats. "I've been worried sick since I saw the Russians at your apartment building. How did you get away? Where are you staying?" "With friends," I replied, using the same vague term from our messages. "People who can protect me." His expression darkened. "What friends, Eliza? Who exactly have you been talking to?" I ignored his question, focusing instead on what mattered most to me. "I'm pregnant, Mark." His eyes widened, dropping to my stomach, though there was nothing to see beneath the draped fabric of my dress. "You're sure? It's mine?" The implication stung, though I supposed I deserved it after pulling away from his touch. "Yes, I'm sure. 8 weeks along. And yes, it's yours." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my heart ache despite everything. "Jesus, Eliza. I didn't know." "How could you?" I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. "You disappeared. 3 weeks without a word. I thought something had happened to you. I thought you were dead." Guilt flashed across his face. "I'm sorry. I had to leave quickly. It wasn't safe to contact you. Because of what you stole from Castellano," I said, watching his reaction carefully. His face went rigid with shock. "How do you know that name?" I touched the diamond pendant at my throat, suddenly conscious of the microphone capturing every word. "You used his number as your business contact in my phone. I accidentally sent him the ultrasound image when I was trying to text Jenna." Mark's face drained of color. You texted Castellano? My ultrasound? I didn't know who he was," I said defensively. "I was trying to tell my best friend I was pregnant, and somehow I ended up texting your boss instead." "He's not my boss," Mark hissed, leaning forward. "He's a monster, Eliza. A killer. The things I've seen him do." He broke off, his eyes darting around the cafe again. "How much have you told him? Does he know you're meeting me?" I hesitated, uncertain how much to reveal. But the fear in Mark's eyes made the decision for me. "He knows everything, Mark. He sent me here." Mark recoiled as if I'd slapped him. You're working with him? After what he's done? What choice did I have? I demanded, my voice rising before I caught myself and lowered it again. He sent a helicopter to my apartment, Mark. Men with guns. They told me I could come willingly or be forced. What was I supposed to do? Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by horror. He's keeping you prisoner. He calls me his protected guest, I said, the irony thick in my voice. Mark reached for my hand again, and this time I didn't pull away. His fingers were cold, his grip desperate. Listen to me, Eliza. You need to get away from him. He's only using you to get to me, to get back what I took. Once he has it, you're disposable to him. You and the baby both. A chill ran through me. Was he right? Had Vito's apparent concern for my welfare been merely another manipulation? The Russians are after you too, I said, remembering Vito's warnings. They came to my apartment looking for me. Mark nodded grimly. They want what I took as well. Information about Castellano's operation, names of his contacts, details of his money laundering network. It's valuable to them. Valuable enough to kill for. Then why take it? I asked, genuinely confused. Why risk your life, our lives, for this? His expression softened. For us, Eliza. For a future together, away from all this. $2 million is enough to disappear, to start over somewhere new, somewhere safe. The picture he painted was seductive in its simplicity. A new life, a fresh start. Our child raised far from the violence and danger of his past, but something didn't add up. If it was for us, I said slowly, why didn't you tell me? Why disappear without a word? He looked away, guilt written plainly across his features. I wanted to protect you, keep you separate from it all. I was going to come back for you once I'd arranged everything. New identities, a place to live. But then the Russians found me faster than I expected. I've been running ever since. And now? I asked, my heart pounding. What happens now? Mark leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. I have a plan. A way out for both of us. There's a boat waiting at a private dock. We can be out of the country by tonight, on our way to a place where neither Castellano nor the Russians can find us. I stared at him, trying to reconcile this desperate, secretive man with the charming, confident Mark I thought I'd known. Just like that? Leave everything behind? What's here worth staying for? He countered. Your job, your apartment, those things can be replaced, Eliza. Our lives, our baby's life, can't be. The mention of our child made my protective instincts flare. Was I really considering this? Running away with a man who had lied to me, stolen millions, and put our lives in danger? But the alternative, remaining under Vito's control indefinitely, seemed equally untenable. How would we even get out of here? I asked, glancing toward the window where I knew Vito's men were watching. There are guards everywhere, Mark smiled, a flash of his old confidence returning. Already taken care of. There's a service exit through the kitchen. A car is waiting in the alley behind the building. By the time Castellano's men realize you're gone, we'll be halfway to the harbor. The plan was reckless, dangerous, but it offered a chance at freedom, a chance to make my own choice rather than being a pawn in this deadly game between powerful men. I touched the diamond pendant again, acutely aware that Vito was hearing every word of this exchange. The code word hovered on my lips, honeymoon, the signal that would bring his men rushing in to apprehend Mark, but I hesitated. What about the Russians? I asked. If they're watching too, they're focused on me, not you, Mark assured me. And I've been careful. Switched cars 3 times on the way here. Used back entrances. Stayed off main streets. We have a window of opportunity, but it's closing fast. He squeezed my hand urgently. We need to go now, Eliza. Right now. I looked into his eyes, searching for the man I had fallen in love with, the man I had imagined raising a child with. He was there, beneath the fear and desperation. Or perhaps that was just what I wanted to see. Okay, I whispered, making my decision. Let's go. Relief flooded his face. He stood, helping me to my feet, his arm sliding protectively around my waist. We moved casually toward the back of the cafe, as if heading to the restrooms. I could feel eyes on us, but didn't dare look back to see if Vito's men had noticed our movement. As we pushed through the swinging door into the kitchen, startling the staff, I felt a momentary pang of doubt. Was I making a terrible mistake? But there was no time to reconsider. Mark was pulling me forward, navigating between stainless steel counters and bewildered chefs, heading for the service entrance at the rear. We burst into the alley, the cold air hitting my face like a slap. A nondescript sedan idled nearby, its engine running. Mark hurried me toward it, glancing frantically over his shoulder. "Almost there," he murmured, his grip on my arm tightening painfully. "Just a few more steps and we're free." The driver's window of the sedan rolled down, revealing a face I didn't recognize, a hard-faced man with a scar running along his jawline and cold eyes that assessed me with clinical interest. "This her?" he asked in a heavily accented voice. Mark nodded. "Yes, let's go." Something in the exchange made me falter. The man wasn't looking at me with the indifference of a hired driver, but with the calculated interest of someone appraising valuable merchandise. "Mark," I said slowly, pulling back slightly. "Who is this?" "Just a friend," Mark said impatiently, tugging me forward. "Come on, we don't have time for this." But it was too late. The pieces were falling into place with horrifying clarity: the Russian accent, the predatory assessment, the too convenient escape plan. "You're not running from the Russians," I whispered, horror dawning. "You're working with them." Mark's expression confirmed my suspicion before he could deny it. "It's complicated, Eliza. Castellano was going to kill me. I needed protection. The Bratva offered me a deal, the information and half the money in exchange for their help." "And me?" I asked, my voice breaking. Was I part of the deal too? His silence was answer enough. I pulled away from him with sudden strength, but his grip tightened, fingers digging into my arm. "Don't make this difficult," he hissed, all pretense of tenderness gone. "Get in the car." "No," I said, struggling against his hold. "Let me go, Mark." "The child is valuable to them," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Insurance that I'll continue to cooperate. They won't hurt you, Eliza. Not if you're carrying my baby." The cold calculation in his words turned my blood to ice. He was selling me, selling our unborn child, to the Russian Mafia as leverage. The man I had loved, had trusted, had created a life with, was nothing but a monster in familiar skin. "Honeymoon," I said clearly, loudly, hoping against hope that the microphone in the pendant would pick up the word. Mark's face contorted with rage. "What did you say?" "Honeymoon," I repeated, fighting against his grip with renewed desperation. "It's over, Mark. It was all a lie." The Russian in the car barked something in his native language, reaching for what I knew instinctively was a weapon. Mark yanked me roughly toward the vehicle, his fingers bruising my arm. And then, chaos erupted. Black SUVs screeched into both ends of the alley, blocking any escape. Men in tactical gear poured out, weapons drawn. The Russian driver raised a gun, but a shot rang out before he could fire, the windshield of the sedan shattering as he slumped forward. Mark dragged me in front of him, using me as a shield as he backed toward the cafe's service entrance. "Stay back," he shouted. "I'll kill her." I felt something hard press against my side. A gun I hadn't known he was carrying. Terror paralyzed me, my hands instinctively moving to protect my stomach. "Let her go, Mark." The voice was calm, authoritative, cutting through the chaos like a blade. Vito emerged from the shadows of the alley, his posture relaxed, but his eyes deadly serious. He wore no tactical gear, carried no visible weapon, yet radiated more danger than any of the armed men surrounding us. "Stay back, Castellano!" Mark called, his voice edged with panic. "I'll do it! I swear to God I'll shoot her!" Vito continued his slow approach, his gaze locked on Mark. "No, you won't. Because the moment you harm her, you lose your only bargaining chip. The only thing keeping you alive right now." I could feel Mark's heart hammering against my back, his breath coming in rapid gasps. He was unraveling, his carefully constructed plan disintegrating before his eyes. "I want safe passage," he demanded. "A car, clear roads to the harbor, then you get your flash drive back." Vito stopped about 10 feet away, his expression almost pitying. "You really don't understand your position, do you, Mark? The Russians have abandoned you. Your driver is dead. My men control every exit. There is no escape. I'll kill her, Mark threatened again, the gun digging painfully into my ribs. I swear I will. No, Vito said simply. You won't. What happened next occurred so quickly I barely registered the sequence of events. A red dot appeared on Mark's temple, a sniper's laser sight. In the split second of distraction, I drove my elbow back into his solar plexus with all my strength, just as Vito had taught me during one of our self-defense lessons over the past 3 days. Mark's grip loosened just enough for me to tear free, dropping to the ground as Vito's men swarmed forward. They subdued Mark with brutal efficiency, disarming him and forcing him to his knees. He didn't resist, the fight draining out of him as quickly as it had appeared. His eyes sought mine as I was helped to my feet by one of Vito's guards, his expression a mixture of rage and desperation. Eliza, he pleaded, don't let them do this. Think of our baby. The invocation of our child, the child he had been willing to sell to the Russians, ignited a cold fury within me. You lost the right to mention my baby when you tried to use us as bargaining chips, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. Whatever happens to you now, you've earned it. Vito appeared at my side, his hand gentle on my elbow as he steered me away from the scene. Are you hurt? He asked quietly, his eyes scanning me for injuries. I shook my head, though in truth I felt broken in ways that had nothing to do with physical pain. No, I'm fine. He nodded, his expression softening slightly. You did well, Eliza, very well, playing along until you were certain of his intentions, using the code word at the perfect moment. I looked up at him, suddenly understanding. You knew he would try to escape with me. I suspected, Vito corrected. Mark was always predictable in his desperation. Using you and the baby as leverage with the Russians was exactly the kind of gambit he would attempt. He guided me toward one of the waiting SUVs, opening the door himself, rather than delegating the task to one of his men. Let's get you home. You've had enough excitement for one day. Home. The word resonated strangely. He meant his mansion, of course, my luxurious prison. Yet after the events of the afternoon, the thought of returning to its secure confines brought an unexpected sense of relief. I glanced back at Mark, still kneeling in the alley, surrounded by Vito's men. What will happen to him? Vito's expression hardened. He'll tell us where the rest of the money is, where the flash drive is hidden, names of his Russian contacts. He met my gaze directly. And then justice will be served for his betrayal. I should have felt horror at the implied death sentence. Instead, I felt a cold detachment. The man I had loved no longer existed. Perhaps had never existed at all. The stranger who had been willing to sell me and our unborn child to the Russian Mafia deserved whatever fate awaited him. As the SUV pulled away from the alley, I leaned my head against the cool window, exhaustion washing over me. Vito sat beside me, close but not touching, a solid presence that had somehow transformed from captor to protector in the span of a few chaotic minutes. What happens now? I asked quietly, echoing the question I had asked Mark earlier. Vito was silent for a moment, his gaze fixed on the city passing outside the window. That depends on you, he said finally. The immediate danger has passed. Mark will give us what we need to neutralize the Russian threat. You could return to your life, if that's what you want. The offer of freedom should have filled me with joy. Instead, it left me feeling strangely hollow. Return to what? My tiny apartment? My mundane job? A life where I would raise a child alone, always looking over my shoulder, wondering if some remaining threat from Mark's betrayal might find us? And if that's not what I want, I asked, hardly believing my own boldness. Vito turned to me then, his dark eyes holding mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. Then perhaps we could come to another arrangement, one that ensures the safety and security of both you and your child. The implication hung between us, neither a threat nor exactly a promise. Protection, security, a life within Vito's world, dangerous perhaps but also powerful. A world where my child would never want for anything, would never be vulnerable as I had been. I need time, I said. To think. He nodded, respect in his gaze. Of course. Take all the time you need. My home remains open to you, regardless of your decision. As we rode in silence back to the helipad, I found my hand once again resting protectively over my stomach. The tiny life inside me, the innocent catalyst for all that had happened, deserved better than the father who had sired it. Deserved protection, security, strength. Perhaps, I thought, as the helicopter lifted us away from the chaos of the city toward the secluded sanctuary of Vito's estate, perhaps there was more than one kind of family, more than one kind of belonging, more than one path to safety in a dangerous world. And perhaps, just perhaps, the mistake of sending an ultrasound to the wrong number hadn't been a mistake at all, but the beginning of something unexpected. Something that might, in its own complicated way, become something like home.